Hello, happy Friday. Let's get right to your questions. Make it quick, all right? All right, so Mary Siren. CNN has covered Aleppo extensively. What would you do, Chris, if you could handle the tragedies in Aleppo? What do you recommend? Well, here's the nice thing. Sometimes people say flattering things to us about how, hey, I think you should do this, or, what would you do? Listen, if I had answers to these kinds of issues, I wouldn't be in the job that I'm in right now. That's why I believe that who we have in leadership is so important. Here's one thing that is obvious from the fact premise of your question, which is we cover Aleppo extensively. We do more of it, I would suggest, certainly, than any morning show. Why? Because it matters. The CNN mandate is broader in its international scope, obviously. I go to those kinds of places. I think I should go more. I think you need to see us in these locations to convey the urgency, to give you the reality from the ground. There is no substitute for being there, even though we trust our sources, let's say currently in Syria, and those who are sending in and out. There's no substitute for being on the ground, for firsthand witnessing of these events. So I think that there has to be more attention paid outwardly by the U.S. government to you to get more of a dialogue about what our country wants to do about this humanitarian crisis and these emergent national security issues that are there. It is a real metaphor, Syria. You have like 6, maybe more different entities warring with each other, sometimes shifting sides. You have ISIS there, which is Fugazi Caliphate, the Raqqa, it's nominal capital, which of course it isn't because ISIS doesn't have a state, it's just a bunch of terrorists. So all of that is in play there, and the moves that you make are going to reverberate into other areas and into a continuation of time. What is happening there now is going to mean something a year, 3 years, 5 years from now. So more attention, more discussion about this strategy, more congressional action on what happens in Syria. There's been too much abdication of not just the duty under the Constitution to declare war, but for authorization of use of military force. The AUMF that the president is operating under right now is old. They don't debate these things in real time anymore. Why not? Because they're cowards on this issue, and they need to embolden themselves and embolden your representation as a result. So that's that. Anna Vega. If American intelligence has proof that Donald Trump has been cohorting with Vladimir Putin, can he be impeached and put on trial for being a traitor to the United States? This is a lot of unsubstantiated ifs. Let's try and disarm this question. Obviously, that would be a high crime or misdemeanor, right? Which is the springing clause for an impeachment hearing. But that would be like a real crime. Forget about a political trial in the House of Representatives. That'd be a real crime. But I don't know of any proof like that. Yes, Donald Trump's lack of transparency and his bizarre defensiveness about Putin and his reluctance to go after Putin and the Kremlin's hijinks and nefarious actions regarding the hacking during our election is weird. President-elect likes to go after anybody for the smallest of reasons, yet he ignores that. He ignores the intelligence. I don't know why. But the lack of transparency fuels a little of the intrigue that is the basis of your question, Anna, but I don't think there's any there. And also, the idea of being impeached, you'd have to get a majority vote in the House. The Democrats don't control the majority. I'm assuming this would be a partisan deal, not something where it's overwhelming and bipartisan or nonpartisan. And then removing them from office, well, then you got to go to the Senate, you got to get 2/3 of them. I don't think it's realistic, and I don't see the basis for it. Now, that doesn't mean that he's handling the situation right, certainly when it comes to the hacking. The intel community doesn't give sourcing the way I do for something that we know, or evidence at a trial where you get to find out who said it. Here's the piece of paper, here's the blood swatch. That's not how intel works, because they don't want to divulge their methods and their means to, in this case, the enemy, which is those who are hacking, which they believe putatively is Putin. Pun intended. Ireeb, I guess that's the screen name, or Rose messing with me. Chris, who decides whether or not his children get security clearance? I guess Trump's children. Or does he request it and it's granted? Well, obviously, the executive is going to put forward who they want as their assemblage of talent around them, and those people get vetted for security clearance. So obviously, the president's going to have a big hand in that. The concern with conflicts of interest, they're not potential, they're real. There are conflicts, because that doesn't mean something fatal necessarily. It means that you have multiple points of interest at the same time, and one of them here is your fiduciary duty, or your constitutional duty to the American people, and you also have this business. So what do you do about it? I don't think we have good answers to that yet. Certainly, Donald Trump is once again feeding a negative perception here by not releasing his taxes, not putting out real information about what his business entanglements / requirements are. So, because we don't know, people are going to be suspicious. And that's the real concern. If his kids are working in the government and working for the business, you've got a problem. You can't do that. The emoluments clause is this arcane part of the Constitution, but it is a real part of the Constitution, and it's there to inhibit efforts to corrupt our public officials. Emoluments is an arcane word, the etymology of it we had an interesting discussion about today on New Day. An emolument, it comes from the Latin word for a miller who's grinding grain for profit. That you're not supposed to get paid off to do what you're supposed to do anyway. It's an old word, but it's a real concept, and it's a modern concept, and it's in play right now. All right, so there's some perspective for you. Enjoy your weekends. Thank you for watching New Day. That goes to you too, Mr. President-elect. I believe you're watching the show this morning, and I appreciate that. Love it even more if you came on. Be well.